everybody. Welcome to Improv FAQ at Length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions surrounding them. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And the question for this episode is going to deal with substance versus form. And this is a topic that I've wanted to tackle for a long time because I love form in long form improv, which is generally like the structure of a show. Things like Harold, Slacker, Laurent, Armando, or ASCAT. And, you know, it's something that people get excited about. It's something that also that people hate. And the conversation that comes up often when it comes to, you know, people who ask questions about it is like, what's the trade-off between form and like the content of the show, like the scene work, the standalone scene work, which is what I'm calling substance. Like, does the show have a cool form? Great. Does it have any substance in the scenes and in the show too? So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to,
No, I absolutely get what you're saying. Like, if the macro is the form because it's your presentation, the micro is the scenes within the form or your story. Do you have enough story? You know, are you focusing so much on your form that you're lacking story, or vice versa?
yes,
Because you have to respect both. Is there balance?
Yeah. And I guess for me, one of the recent opinions that I've developed is that, one, I think that form can be a tool for ensuring really strong story and content, or that a good form should demand good improv. And part of that is demanding skill sets of a good improviser, but also like a good form is about storytelling, right?
Right.
And so I don't know. I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts are on like how does it happen that so many people get hung up on the form and miss the point of what the form has to offer, or change the form to be more seasoning and no meat?
Oh, that's a great question. Like, I love this topic because I think when I've been asked this question, it's usually someone, you know, in like an advanced one class where they're just learning how to do long form, read something like Truth and Comedy. So they just learn about the Herald. So they're really excited to do something Herald-esque, and they haven't laid the groundwork to do something that would need you to sustain a storyline for 3 beats or, you know, 3 acts. So it's almost putting the cart in front of the horse. And like the discussion is like, can you do a scene that's longer than 2 minutes? Because usually when you get into like the beginnings of doing long form, it's very common to see a student or a class go, you know, just you have a beginning, you find the game, and almost as soon as you find the game, scene's over. So how are you going to input that? How are you going to plug that into something as drawn out as a Herald? You know, so and I think that progresses because people, you know, depending on when they see these forms or when they want to adapt them to their style, it could either be something that's great because if they do get to the point where they are laying down great groundwork for great storytelling, that they have to start thinking about the presentation. So you're not just a one-trick pony. Like, you want to, you know, put a nice frame on your portrait, if you will. And that's when it's better to start incorporating forms, because forms have rules. So if you're playing within rules, that's restraining in a way. So can you play to the height of your ability with restraints and still make it interesting and still put on something that's entertaining?
Yeah. And so that is the challenge, that exactly what you said is like, can you put on a show that has good storytelling, is still entertaining within the confines? And I don't know, for some people it's a positive challenge, and for others it's like this unnecessary challenge that's like, why can't I just do good scene work? And I suppose I get that, because even though I love to play with form, I also, if the form doesn't have a strong philosophy behind it, if as a team or a show, we're not really including the philosophy of the form in the goals of the show, and it's just kind of like tinkering with mechanics and whatnot. Sometimes that's fun, and that's actually a little short for me of like just doing it for the sake of doing it and seeing if you can accomplish it like short form, where it's just like, wouldn't it be so hard if we were trying to do a scene while also doing this? Like,
yes,
that can be fun by itself. But if I'm really going to work with a team and a form, I would rather focus on like what is the philosophy of what that form is demanding from us as performers and in a show, and include that. If we're not doing that, then I'd rather have no rules and free license, like we've talked about on the show before, is just like completely free form, organic, more impulsive play, freedom to run. And so I understand that, but I guess my thought is like, that seems like so much harder. Some people, I think, want that too early and miss the benefits of having particular goals and structures in form, and the growth that can come along with trying to really do a form well.
Well, I think there's also positive aspects to having that kind of restraint. So, for example, if you are playing with students who have an issue sustaining character, doing something like a Larange is a great form to introduce to their play, because now they have to play that character. Now they have to develop it. Now they have to have, room to grow and to respect everything that they established, or it's going to be wonky. If you want to have a good scene, you have to build this character. And if it's not a strong point, like, this is a great opportunity for you to enhance those skill sets.
Yeah. And I would argue that everybody has to go through some kind of rite of passage working with form in long form, because of those things that people often find challenging, which is either typically the things in long form that people find difficult are going to be, sustainable characters and playing a point of view over a longer show or a longer scene. And then also finding connections in a show, because I think that a show without connections, with just these unrelated scenes and parts of a show that don't have well-played connections by the end, I think that show is missing out on one of the things that is most magical about improv. And so working with form, things like a Herald, where the run at the end is meant to be an opportunity to make connections and blend things together.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing that I think, if you never go through the process of honing that skill, then I don't know how much, how else do you get to a point that's about strong scene work? People want, like, the counter argument is like, well, let me just focus on the scene work. And to me, it's like, well, but if you're going to be working on scene work and show work, isn't it so much more difficult to do it in this open-ended way, where it's just like scene by scene, you get notes on how that scene went and what you could have done or should do differently?
I agree, but there's also the mindset of people who, I did a Herald because I did 3 scenes, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C in a row, and there's no meat to those scenes. So, I think I said in the beginning, like, we got to find that balance. Like, having a form with goals is great, but there's also times when you have to break the goal, break the form to tell the story. Yeah, and I think people have a hard time with that too, when it's perfectly okay. Like, what we're doing is we're creating by committee, so it's fine.
Yeah. What do you think is there like a minimum amount of work that you have to do with form, or like, I don't know. Like if you were going to design a training program or make a checklist for improvisers, how much work with form would it include before you're like, it's probably going to take this much for you to get what everyone should be getting out of form before you decide whether or not to leave it behind?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess like if it's for learning purposes, I would take the forms that I think help people. I guess I would help people develop the skills that I think are most useful in all the other forms. So, like going back to like a Larange, like if you could sustain that character for
wait,
that
are
long,
you saying Larange with it's with a D, Larand, like round.
I've always you say
maybe,
potato, I say potato.
I don't know. I think it's French. So
I don't know.
I
never wrote it out.
Wrong. I could be Americanizing it.
Oh, Bob Wick pronounced something. Bob Wick got a name wrong. Larange. Anyway.
Larand.
Anyway.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
I don't know.
Okay, but more importantly, what a Larand is a closed loop of characters in a show. So each improviser plays one character throughout the entire show. Is the main point of it. There's a particular kind of circuit to it, but also you could play a Larand that is more loose in the order of scenes and just has the rule of one character per player, period. But so you're saying that would be a particular form to use because it teaches long character play as one skill for an improviser to learn, right?
Correct. Yes.
What else? What else would be on the menu or the list of things that people got to be working on?
Slacker, I think it's really useful. Or also, what's that one where everything takes place like in proximity to each other and 10 seconds apart?
Close quarters.
Close quarters. Thank you. Yeah.
So
like stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The Slacker is really interesting to me because that's a form that uses tag edits only. So in other words, at least one character from the previous scene has to remain in the next scene. And again, in terms of storytelling and like substance of scene work, where that, if I'm not mistaken, where that form gets its name is from, I think it's Richard Linklater. Is that a filmmaker?
Are you asking me about names?
I think from Tony Larange.
Okay.
No. From there's I think it's Linklater movie called Slacker where there isn't a protagonist. The camera just follows a character or a small set of characters for a little while, and then literally some other character crosses paths with the people in focus, and then the camera will follow a new person, and it switches focuses like 30 times throughout the movie and doesn't really have a protagonist. I think there's maybe a couple recurring characters, but like the point being is that like that's an interesting approach to storytelling, and the reason why that movie in the first place was like a big indie sensation is because it broke the mold. And I think people focus less on that when they're playing with something like Slacker and more on the fact that like we don't want to do sweep edits or like we really want to play with tags. You know what I mean? And it's like that's a pretty surface level approach to it, right?
Yeah, but if you get them to focus on relationship building, then you create this whole little world where everybody, like a small town type feel, where everybody kind of knows each other, and they have to focus on that. And I think relationships is something people slack on, or I don't want to say slack. People, I don't know, don't develop enough. And I think relationships in a scene are important because they can be a heightening tool. And honestly, like even forms could be a heightening tool. If you think about like something like Shakespeare, or improvised Shakespeare, like a lot of the games they play is because the whole audience is in on the fact that the form is Shakespearean. So like even the beginning where the guy has to do the monologue in the Shakespeare style, it's incredible. And usually they go on for quite a bit. Like the last one I saw, like they go forever. Like it's incredible. It's first it's funny because he's doing it. Then it's funny because it's going on for a little bit longer and probably making references to whatever the get was. And then he keeps on going to it, becomes funny once more because, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did it. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah. And then also every time I've seen it, the opening monologue has been able to come full circle and, either stick the landing with the title or coming back to a wordplay on, whatever the beginning of that monologue was. And, it's impressive because, the audience is in on the challenge and the impressive use of that genre in an improvised medium. I mean, and that's hard. But I also think that for me personally, doing standalone scene work is as entertaining for the audience as it is for the people on stage. Is harder to accomplish than working with form. And so, in other words, I think that you have to be really good at improv without form in order to earn the right to do standalone scene work in a montage or a commando or whatever it is. Like that's how I feel, is that like if you're going to be like, we're not going to do a form, we're just going to do like scene by scene, like you better be really good. I think it is a very risky thing. We were talking to Chris Peterson about like the disadvantage that improv is at as an art form, because so often, too often, a random audience comes to check it out of curiosity and sees really bad improv or mediocre improv and decides that they don't like it, and associates that one experience with improv and writes it off. And I think that I think you can have bad experiences from both form and going for standalone scene work, but I think that there's more interest built into a show that is a genre show like improvised Shakespeare, or something like a monologue show like ASCAT or Armando. There is built-in appeal to forms that act as a little bit of a safety net.
Like a buffer, yeah.
Yeah. And for better or worse, again, you don't want to use it as a crutch, but while you're learning and developing, you also don't want to kid yourself into thinking that you're good enough before you are to just be like standalone scene work and knock it out of the park. Like, you know what I mean? That to me is for like veteran improvisers to do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
But
I still think you still have to get to a point where you can respect, or not respect, but honor the goal of the form itself. Like, depending on what form you're doing, I think there's forms that to truly do it right, you have to be on par with like a strong improviser as well. You know, going back to the Shakespeare thing, I wouldn't try it. I'm not a Shakespeare guy, you know. Sure. So I think that's an accomplishment.
Improvised Shakespeare but is probably harder than doing standalone scene work in that regard.
Yeah. I know I'm being nitpicky.
No, you're right.
But to do a commando, I think doing commando gives you an advantage rather than doing a standalone scene, because it's self-perpetuating. Like, you're always going to the audience for an ask, and you know.
Yeah, but like, okay, so Commando, it does have that rebound point built into it. You stop the scene, you get to revisit the audience, but that to me isn't really form. That can still be really like, I guess it reminds the audience that like, hey, if you don't like this scene, it's going to be over and we'll do a new one.
It's true, because some of the laughs you get is because of the, well, that was a cat. So some of us in the audience have cats. What's a pet you would like to have? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. I think that again, even in presenting a show to an audience,
Right.
I think when teams or shows use form, that they're underutilizing the selling point of it too. Because if you're going to do a slacker, I would based on my observation and my experience, I would guess that most people who are doing a particular form that is more common, like Slacker, Larand, Armando, they're not going to stop and explain what the form is and why they're doing it to the audience. But I think that might be a missed opportunity, because again, of like a good form having a good philosophy behind it. So if it's like Slacker, and you kind of set the tone of for the audience of like, we are going to do a series of improvised scenes threaded together by characters, and we're going to explore a whole world of characters that like where the focus of the story meanders with our interests and our curiosities about who
Right.
else is in the lives of the people on stage, and whatever you can frame it in a particular way that kind of like sets the audience up to, like you said with improvised Shakespeare, be in the know about what you're doing. And I think that has its advantages too, much in a different way than like Commando being a stop and start form does.
So you're saying, like, before we even start the show, like, hey, this is our goal, or
Yeah. Just boil it down to like a couple sentences of like what the form is, because otherwise, if you do like I've noticed this with mono scene, you think you must tell the audience that you are doing a mono scene at the top of a show, or both initiated and uninitiated audiences will start to get antsy about that first edit not happening. They'll be like, what? What?
I don't know. Like, to me, honestly, if I think if you're playing if you're playing the form strong enough, they'll figure out the rules themselves. It's like watching, like the first audience to watch the movie Slacker probably figured out, halfway through what this is about. I don't think we have to tell them everything we're about to do. The magician doesn't explain the trick so much.
That's a good point. But then, maybe let me frame it like this: is that like if you're a good improviser, you are going to get away with doing a good form or a non-form oriented show. I'm thinking more about people who are in that mid ground of like the first couple of years of doing improv, in between like completing a class program and becoming like very, very self-assured performers, like solid, consistent performers. When you're having that those in between hit or miss, I'm trying to think of like, what is your best shot of success for you to grow and for the audience to get that base level entertainment out of your shows as well. And to me, Slacker the movie doesn't have to explain it because it is directed ahead of time. But like for improv, it's not built into it, and it's not a guarantee that the people on stage are really solid enough to carry what they're doing, whether it's form or standalone scene work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, it was directed ahead of time, but I'm talking about mechanics. And the mechanics, if it's done right, should show itself. And I agree. Like someone who is just getting into this, or like a newer troupe, there might be an advantage to explaining what we're trying to do, so they appreciate what your goal is, rather than just entertainment. So it's like, oh, they achieved it. So there's like almost as a bonus, like, oh, cool, they did exactly what they told me they're going to do. Cool. I guess.
But do you think it? Okay, again, that might be true, but do you think it's beneficial to not tell people what you're doing? Do you think that's a better experience than giving a thematic blurb up front?
I don't see the benefit. Like, I could see it working either way. I just don't think it's the benefits or like are that great. And what happens if in the middle of it, like you failed at doing the form for some reason? Oh man, I forgot. Like we were supposed to do this intricate thing, and we just kept on chugging through until lights. But it was still great content. So like, what if the content was superior to the form in that case? And then if you did explain what the form was supposed to be, like
they feel lied
there
to.
You might get an audience member like, oh man, I enjoyed myself, but they told me that they're going to do a 3-act thing and they only did 2 acts.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
I mean,
so the trade-off is, the downside would be that like you're kind of locking yourself into a particular track.
Exactly.
I think I have a. I guess it's not much of a caveat, but
nope.
I think I do have in my how to introduce long form shows video. I do offer the idea of just saying whatever your intro is, no matter how specific the promise of your form is, always tag it with something like, at least that, we're going to do 3 acts and by the end it'll all connect. At least that's what we hope will happen, or like that, or at least that's
yes.
our intention at this moment. We might screw it up. So I don't know, but again, I suppose that is a lot to remember to tack onto your show at the beginning, just to give yourself the right amount of overture and leeway or flexibility if you go off track.
Yeah. Honestly, the audience is there just to be entertained. So as long as you're doing that, I'm cool with it. I don't think I don't think they have to look behind the curtain.
Okay, well, so what about like let's say, in terms of like being a memorable show, a dynamic, memorable show,
right?
Like a scene by scene by scene montage, is even done at like a B average, B plus. Nothing bad about it, nothing phenomenal about it. Do you think that that show would be more memorable if it had an interesting form to it and the same quality? Like an audience walks away and are like, yeah, I saw an improv show, and they're like, they start naming scenes. If it's a montage that they saw, they're probably just going to start naming scenes and moments that you had to be there for. But if it had a form to it, it might have a little bit more memorability and easier to communicate to word of mouth people, who weren't there, why you loved it so much.
I guess it's like, how educated is your audience as far as like, is it their first time seeing improv? Because I think they'll just appreciate seeing laughs. If it's a regular Wednesday night, it's regular Wednesday night improv audience. That was late night, what we're going to do tonight, honey, audiences.
Trash and go see improv comedy.
I think they look for different things. And so going back to like announcing what your form is, maybe it might, I can see it in some cases being distracting because they're looking for a specific thing rather than pay attention to what's going on in the moment, so I don't know. I honestly, it's a case by case. So I don't want to paint with a broad brush on this one, but I can see it working either way. Honestly, I can see it. Like if you really come up with like an interesting, unique, intricate form and you're playing it well, and maybe some of your scenes aren't that great, but maybe it's because of the function of and the limitations of your form. It can still be entertaining because, oh man, they're doing the best they can with the rock that they're carrying in their backpack to, that old saying, to what they can accomplish,
Well, so what about, let's go back to the idea of like, if you were going to teach a program, you would want people to experience form, to work on form, at least enough to have build your chops as an improviser when it comes to things like sustainable character work and show connections and show dynamics, and these, the mechanics of the toolbox, that you might use in an more open-ended show. So what about like in a open-ended show, what kind of things do you think like ought to be happening in any given show to make sure that it is still, you know, having full potential?
Oh, that's a big one. Obviously, unique characters with interesting points of views, an overall story arc, character games, group games, relationship games. In a perfect world, everything gets tied up at the end and there's a great ending. And whoever the protagonist is, they learn something about themselves. You know, like there was a reason why we saw what made today different.
Yeah.
Same question, bud. What would you do?
I mean, I agree. I think that a good show should be about something. I think that you know, you can figure out what that is after the fact and just be improvising. But like I think the mission of a show should be to have some kind of like slogan to it, you know. And I don't know the best way to latch onto that, but again, I always look at it through form, and I do have fun trying to find ways to organically find, you know, what the point of view of the show, right? Like I try to find that in shows like at Pointless with the League, where it's a very, very loosely formatted show, and it's like we still look for like those two opening scenes, which are meant to be just like usually two-person and usually more grounded or realistic. When I'm like kind of deconstructing those two scenes, I'm like, what do these have in common, and what are they both missing? And I kind of use that for the rest of the show to explore, explore. And like if it's missing something, maybe they're too similar, I'll try to add something to the dynamics. Or if they are pretty dissimilar in subject, I'll try to find like where they overlap. And then that to me is like the slogan of the show of like, oh, maybe this is about neglecting relationships, or it's about hiding from yourself. Whatever it is. You know what I mean?
No, I totally understand. Yeah.
That's
what I would look for. Like,
list,
yeah. Cool.
What do you? Yeah.
If you were starting, what do I look for?
Yeah.
I guess a basic theme. Like, and if there's a theme, then I think of who's the main characters. If one of them has to learn something, what is it? You know, or what are they learning about themselves today? Or what is their, you know, if the theme is also connected to their want, then I discover their why. And is there any connection between the two whys? And explore that, you know, and then do other versions of that why.
So in a montage, are you looking for narrative arcs, like to have characters come back and like have these story arcs?
Not overall in the overall set, but within the scenes, definitely. Not all the time. Well, I know. I guess it depends on how I want to play. But if I was looking for something, I guess that was my most common thing I look for. Like,
gotcha.
Because I like relationship scenes, so I tend to play that way. Like, you know, if we're playing this game, why are we playing this game? Is this an ego-based game? Is this, you know, because usually like with the games, there's the want and then the push and pull tension of either not getting your want or maybe getting too much of your want, and now you have to deal with, you know, be careful what you wish for situations. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So you are very much story driven.
Very.
Yeah. Are there particular forums that you've worked with that like let's aside from, I think, like obviously genre or you know, narrative forums, but are there other forums that like kind of get that checklist for you in the most satisfying way? Your checklist of like the connections and character arcs and everything?
Oh God.
Or like
Well, I
shows that
know,
you've done?
like, yeah, like date night has always been really good, especially if I'm the lead. Like, you get to explore this character, and it usually has a happily ever ending, going on, a happily ever ending going on. Um, yeah, I really like Laughter House and the Secret Secrets, because there was like, I guess I really like it if I can do a long form version of a character. So I guess that's why I picked L'Orange earlier. No, gosh, because
Yeah.
I do like that kind of play. I think it's important. I think even if you're like the guy behind the guy, if you can sustain a strong character, because there's been those times in like date night, which is improvised romantic comedy, where you meet two characters, they get introduced and they go on a date, and during that date you get the flashback to how they became that character. You get the flash to a little bit forward past the date to see how their relationship starts, how like the honeymoon moment is going, or part of the relationship, and then you fast forward into the end where you get to see, do they or do they not get married, and what's that like with their kids and everything. So you get to really develop a character, and and everything has a consequence. So if you're like during your date, you mentioned you like rock climbing. Well, if you skip to the future, you may have had an accident, so now you're walking different, or something physically or emotionally changes because of that accident.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, it sounds like you really just thrive on forms or an approach to play that's all about exploring what's behind the people, the individuals, and the characters. I feel like I'm much more like what can we learn about the world? What is the show saying about the world? Which is like it's a macro or a micro version of
Exactly
the same sort of thing,
yeah.
right? Is that like you learn more and more about the individual, and like because it's so specific, it's relatable, and it says something about the point of view and perspective. But I'm always looking for forms that like more like I guess a slacker is almost like a mid ground because you get to explore the world through character. But
Yeah.
I like to find that slogan and like different situations and behaviors that are like, isn't it funny that we're always blank? Like
That's a very James line. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Yeah. Is there a form that like highlights that? Like, do you have a go-to, like, oh man, I love it when someone's like, we're going to do this tonight.
I really love the Presto Changeo approach to montage, which I believe originated with the 313, and we borrowed it from their playing style. But it's essentially, you get whatever your suggestion is, and it's a montage of scenes, but you do it with a quick burst of a series of scenes at the top of the show. So you just kind of like take that single suggestion and respond to it in a bunch of ways in a series of like blackout length scenes. And that gives you like the table of contents for the rest of the show that you can keep pulling from and building on. And I love that because it offers an immediate energy up front, but it also gives you all these different responses to that suggestion. And kind of like a herald, you get this this platter of a bunch of seemingly unlike things, explore them all in their own right, and then by the end of it, find ways to make surprising connections or to I guess point out the connections, which at the peak of for me, what I would consider the peak of Presto Changeo's performance, the way that we would do that is with transformative edits, where one scene would blend into another, and the that tool of juxtaposition was really satisfying in that way of like, oh shit, it's becoming the same scene.
Oh,
You know what I
okay.
mean?
Yes.
So I love that kind of stuff yeah, has an arc about like, let's explore these different things and then we'll weave them together when the opportunity presents itself.
You're big into morphing. Yeah, I didn't
love
notice
morphing.
that. You're big into morphing. Like, can we morph time? Can we morph reality? What are we morphing to?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think that that's just a really interesting tool or storytelling piece for.
Yeah.
I can't remember what episode we talked about this on, but I love to create shows that have the same experiences of mind expanding drugs, and so like morphing transformation is a very trippy effect. I think it's a really like I don't know. It's just exciting when it works at its best.
I think for myself, I think one of the best notes I ever received was from Nancy, who said the scene was great, but was missing an awe moment, and it was during a written show. And I just love the thought. Like, I didn't until then. I thought my job as improviser was only laugh, make them laugh. If you didn't make them laugh, help someone else make them laugh. Like, as long as we make them laugh by committee, we're doing our job. And I never considered, like, how cool is it to create a character in seconds that if something bad happens to them, or if they get disappointed, or something doesn't go their way, like the whole audience goes, "Aw." So I think I like to put that element into stuff I do, because I really enjoy those moments, and I think the laughter that happens after those moments are better. Like they're stronger for the audience. They feel they have more depth to them.
Yeah, you're right. That is a great goal, and again, is about like dynamics and being surprising, right. And having a bigger philosophy of like, it doesn't have to just be silly moments. It's also about relatable other emotions on the palette. So maybe to close out, we can talk about kind of advice that I know also comes up in questions for teams with form and substance, or the quality of the scene work. Like, how do you know when to push deeper into the challenge of a form as a team, or to give it up, back off, and just be like, we'll montage because it's either becoming too much of a infighting about what form we're doing and how, or right. The form just isn't serving you for whatever reason. Like, how do you balance like doubling down to meet the challenge of a form versus just pulling back and letting loose?
Are you asking like from a coaching point of view, or just?
I guess well, both is like, if you're a coach, or for you personally, if you're inside of a team, how do you gauge that?
Yeah, from a coaching point of view, I first usually challenge them with a form that highlights skill sets that I think they need to work on. So it will be difficult, but it's like going to the gym and lifting a little bit heavier weights. You might not get as many reps in, but you're building to, strength. You're increasing, you're strengthening stuff you're going to need along the way if you're going to do other stuff, or play a sport or whatever. And then maybe switch it to, if we get a run or something, switch it to something that's more in line with their natural way they play, but also challenge them to use the stuff they learned with the original form. As a performer, I think it's time to switch as soon as you're not scared, I guess. Like if it's too easy, then you probably figured this thing out too well, and it's time to switch it up a little bit. So it might either be the way you perform within the form or the form itself. And that's just a conversation you have to have with your troupe. What about you, James? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think what I would just encourage people to do is, if you're getting frustrated by a form, or you think it's like, just too arbitrary or like why are we doing this, and you're annoyed by the rules of it. I think before you back away from the form and give up on it, consider what the philosophy of the form is. Like what, paint the best picture you can of what doing the form well has to offer. And maybe it's as simple as like understanding that. It might also be as simple as being like, oh, well, if that's the goal and the philosophy of the form is more important than the particular mechanics, change some of the mechanics. Make it your own. Be like,
tweak
I just don't like the fact that we do blank. And it's like, well, then maybe just make a new rule about it.
None of us can do a French accent, so this whole part where we have to do a French accent is ridiculous because we'll never be able to do it. You know, it's not something we can learn.
The other thing I would say is that it is always good to just kind of like cleanse the palate and take a break from form and either reapproach it later, or what you can do is kind of like go to a montage and then start building a form one rule at a time and just be like, okay, well, what's one thing that we can do to challenge ourselves in a positive way that sounds exciting? Maybe we eliminate sweep edits, or maybe we everybody's got to bring back a character or bring back each other's idea. You know what I mean? Just like one thing at a time, and then as long as if you can stack some particular goals that make it exciting by the the deeper you get into it, you'll have more naturally built a form out of your interests without having to just pick something that already exists and decide that that's going to be your thing.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Man, okay, one last thing. What do you think?
Okay.
The more and more popular that improv becomes, does form change? Does the role of form change, like in terms of distinguishing your group? And let's say, because in New York during normal times, shit ton of improv going on, and all teams look the same on paper, and so does it become more important to stand out with something like a form or a style or a brand? Or
I was just about to say, I think for brand, like having a specific style, or I don't know if you can do it in a way, like if it's your thing, like get known for, being known for your thing is interesting. Or if there's, I think about it this way. If you are the type of troupe that travels, you go to these festivals that have maybe multiple stages, someone's going to be there on, a Friday or one of those Wednesdays. Audiences I talked about earlier are going to be looking at like, they don't know anybody, and all they're doing is looking at the names, because some people are too lazy to read what, your bio or your troupe bio. They're just looking at the names. So if you have something that's unique, like improvised Shakespeare, if someone's like into Shakespeare or a thespian, they might be interested in that particular show. Or like, something like Rockamatic, or, like a musical, like the Deltones, like, musicians might be more prone to go to that type of experience. So I think there is something to be said about having your own form, or, and especially have something that highlights your form, because that's your presentation, like going back to the Slacker, like we know directors because of the type of storytelling they do, not just because they make a great movie. It's the way they tell them, the way they tell their stories. So I do think you have to have great content, because, if you do a Slacker and none of the things that make up your Slacker are interesting, but you do a great Slacker, it's not a it's a boring movie. So you have to do it, you have to find that balance.
Yeah. So, and in what you said, I hear that it is dependent on your goals and on your community, because if your goals include things like festivals or being the most standout troupe, that's one thing. And if you are in a really dense community versus a not so dense community, there may be more or less pressure to have those branding things. Okay. Well, I'm glad that we
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah,
that we took a look at this topic, because I think I'm such a fan of form, and it does kind of bum me out. I get the counter argument of like, if it distracts from the show, then it's bad, or the quality of the content and scenes, then it's bad. But I think that people maybe back down too quickly from approaching form, and miss the ways that it uplifts the substance of your show, or can, if you approach it with the right mentality.
Well, really quick, I'm just thinking about what you said during the Elastic Time Cannon episode, how there was a point where that form became a little frustrating, but you guys kind of like worked through it. And that was the moment you're like, no, most people would have stopped right here, but thank God we didn't. And how fulfilling was that? This isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be fun, but not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it, and people like us would find it boring and not want to do it.
That is a great point, man. Yeah, this is definitely supposed to be fun, but it's not necessarily supposed to be easy. So every once in a while, challenge yourself to do something difficult. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
Awesome, man.
Put that on a t-shirt. All right.
Very cool. Good talk as always, Bob.
Always, buddy.
Anything we should mention at the tail end here? We're still
like us, friend us.
Yeah.
Share us.
Subscribe.
All that good stuff. Yeah.
And
I'll see you next Wednesday.
Yeah, see you Wednesday for that late improv. As if that isn't something that we have done on a regular basis is late night Wednesdays for improv. You better believe it is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, we'll catch you next time on Improv FAQ at length. Bye.
Bye.